see this column, which is column A. This is the initial approved budget. And what this column is saying is that for the financial year 2018-19, this is what has been approved initially. We can see 85, and it's directed toward this expenditure, which is indicated below, including the 364. So that is what is actually planned for the whole financial year. This is what this column is speaking, column A. Column B, in case there's a revision, there can be changes, but unfortunately for us in 18-19 it was the same. So the actual expenditure is where we begin from D on column D. So I would just like to say that there is no problem with the planning to pay domestic arrears of 364. Then eventually you pay 363.
Do you follow where my question was coming from?
Yes, sir.
My question comes from one. How you have domestic arrears of 3 billion minus the record of your statement of outstanding commitments, and here you provide for 364. He explained that the effect of that is as a result of the letter that came from the ministry. Minus the committee accessing that letter. I am talking to accounts which letter I have not seen. So I need that explanation. For me here it appears as if they gave you what you budgeted for. You understand? This is a statement of appropriation. It is like what you asked for is what they gave you and that is what you paid. So you have omitted your responsibility. You actually accumulate. You see the adjustment on the statement of outstanding commitments. There's an adjustment of 144 million. So you are actually accumulating further areas, yet the law does not allow before you conclude on the previous areas. That's the sequence of accounting.
That's very clear. I think you may attempt to sort out the issue, but I don't think we can sort it out from here now. He's just trying to alert you that you will take care of some of these issues. We are not here to audit your account, but we are seeing quite anomalies, so many anomalies, which you need to go and try to rectify. And also it precedes the issue of planning, as he said. How do you plan? You have this amount of money accumulative, and then you budget for a small amount of money, yet you are supposed to have covered all the whatever. Even if you're not going to be warranted or given the money, you should budget for it, you should plan for it. So this is a food for thought for you, okay, that you need to go and look into. So honorable members, I think having examined the accounts of the ministry, now let us move to this, the audit report, which I think we will go very fast. We are seeing here the issue of the implementation of plan outputs, page 2. "24 outputs that were assessed, representing 80%, were fully implemented. 3 outputs representing 10% were partially implemented, while 3 outputs representing 10% were not implemented at all." And this is indicated in Appendix 1. You can see here development of the museum, heritage site, development of source of the Nile, tourism investment, promotion and marketing, etc., etc. There are many. So can you explain to us, accounting officer, what happened? Why you were not able to implement what you plan for?
Chair, our explanation is that we did not get all the money that we had budgeted for released, whereas we had budgeted for 15.7 billion, we received about 14.7. So we got about 90%, maybe close to 90 to 93% of the budget. And so we couldn't implement a few of the activities. If you look at that appendix, I think it has a key which shows what was fully implemented, what was, and like the auditors have pointed out, we were able to do more than 80% fully, 10% partially, and the other 10% we couldn't, to non-release of funds.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Accounting Officer, the appropriate way of you had to answer this question. These people of accounts should. It's an accountability matter. You must now go back to your statement of appropriation. You say, how much did we budget for? Is the balance attributed to the items that were not executed? And is it also divisible to the amounts that were partially attributed? And can that accountability fall due? That's how this response should appear. Because the difference between 15 and 14 is 1 billion. So one should, because you see, the budget we give you is activity based, and the activities are costed. In your statement, in the provision of your financial statements, in your ministerial process statement, that those measurable items are costed. What would have been ideal is to indicate that those 3 items that were partially executed were costing this. And those that were not entirely are these 3, and they were costing this. If that total comes to the amount of money that was not released, they would not be able to answer. Now together. Here you are indicating 280 million. But the balance of what was not appropriated, what was not warranted to you, vis-a-vis what you requested, there's a difference.
Honorable Chair, the 280
is
only for procurement.
Yes.
So it's not all, some of the activities that are supposed to be.
It is part of them.
Yeah.
Because that was also planned to procure this.
Absolutely.
So this balance of 1.031 that was not provided should be aligned with these 6 activities that were partially implemented and those that were not.
I know what you're talking about, honorable member. Maybe that, in accounting terms, yes, that would be the ideal, but in practical terms, it may not be very possible to say, I partially, so out of this, how much did I do partially that amounts to this amount of money?
It is impossible because the basis of our appropriation is the cost of your outputs.
These are quantifiable. These are quantifiable, outputs, isn't it? That's why the Auditor General was able to identify them. Otherwise, to make just a blanket statement is taking this committee for granted. You see what I'm saying? It's like, well, yeah, you see, we didn't do it because the money was now. What justification do you have that the money that is not remitted to you is actually commensurate with the outputs that you are supposed to implement, which you didn't implement? Because you may find that these outputs are maybe about 100 million. So now you lumps it up in terms of the money that you didn't receive. So why did you quantify it when you were responding?
Pardon?
Why did you quantify it when you were responding?
Well, it's not that we didn't quantify, but we also went by the query. The query was looking at, in terms of percentages, you were able to do 80% fully, you were not able to do 10%.
Let me tell you,
why did you also do the same?
It is almost the same amount of money.
Why did you do the same?
No, that's exactly what we
you see, let me tell you the effect of this matter. After this report, the minister will come with a treasury memorandum. And let me tell you, finance is not sleeping. These same amounts you did not execute may have been regurgitated in your next appropriation. The moment they don't see relevance, they are going to keep cutting this money to the same tune. So why you need to bring it out? Because first of all, it was your priority activities highlighted in your mission statement for that financial year. It was quantified and it was costed to provide for the appropriation. So this hampers the performance of the entity. You need to highlight that to the extent of this or this amount was denied as performance of the institution to this extent. So when you answer and you say the reason for non-execution was because of failure to provide for these amounts, the balance of what you didn't get should be aligned to the activities. It is for your own good, by the way. But even for this committee, we don't just assume that what was not provided is what led to the... Are we together?
Yes.
We are not satisfied with that, your explanation. The reason why you have not implemented fully the 3 and then partially the 3.
We shall quantify and we can submit. We can go back and quantify that. But we thought we didn't intend to take the committee for granted. But
it's very, very important
us,
because you see, you were given amounts at 90%, but you executed activities at 80%. There is a distinct difference between what was provided and what you ought to have executed.
Okay, let's move to the next. Failure to implement plan procurement, which is the review of the ministry's procurement plan revealed that several planned procurements to the tune of 125 million were not implemented. And when we go to Appendix 2, you will see for yourself what are these procurements? Advertising and public relations, press statements, maintenance, civil work, antivirus software. Hey, you didn't even procure antivirus.
We could only procure for the little money that we had. Partially, we did.
Only 5. So your systems have been having a lot of problems.
Not really.
Heavy duty scanner, a certain small office, equipment and engraving. So what is your explanation of that, accounting officer?
Chair, well, that's exactly the same explanation I had given earlier. When you do not receive all the money that you had planned.
So is it part of the 1
So
billion,
your
1
procurement
billion?
plan cannot be fully implemented. So we had to see what of the procurements, some of the procurements had to pend.
Are you seeing why he was emphasizing the issue of quantification? Now this one is only specific for
procurement.
For the procurement, which is very, very clear, you know. And we really want to attribute it because of that balance that you didn't receive. Now, how about this unspent balance on salaries?
Unspent balances on salaries, Chairman, we like we gave in our explanation. During the year, the ministry had planned to pay. There was a decision taken to increase salaries for the science cadre, and so we had budgeted for that increment. But the process of getting these approvals from Ministry of Public Service and this for being able to access the payroll has taken a long time. Actually, most of them we have paid this financial year. We have had to pay arrears because every year we've been accumulating some Because you have to write to Ministry of Public Service for them to approve that this person should be in the science cadre, and then it goes to the commission.
You wrote to the ministry?
Pardon? Yes, we have sent you some of the letters. We have, I think there is a letter, Appendix 4. We write to the Secretary of the Public Service Commission. They don't have.
Where is the letter?
Oh, we didn't give them the letter.
Huh?
I think, let me give you the.
You have appendices that you've kept with yourself.
Sorry.
So how do we report something?
I'm just trying to look for the appendix 4. I'm not getting anything.
Mr. Chairman.
When did you write this letter? But there's no indication that it was received.
This one is from our own
Hmm?
copies. We didn't put the receipt.
No, the copy from the ministry that they have received. Right? What shows that the ministry received? Oh, yes, we wrote this because of accountability.
No, no, no.
So what shows that the ministry received the letter? Hmm?
Well, maybe we should have.
That's all right.
They took action in appendix 4.
We here.
There's another letter there from the commission.
We here.
There.
Appendix 4.
This one.
There is the minutes of the commission.
Is it here?
It is there, next to that letter.
Appendix 5, Appendix 4.
They are all the appendixes. They are called appendix 4, but after
but
the
this
first
is-
letter from the ministry,
So after the letter from the ministry, there are minutes of the Public Service Commission.
You wrote this one in February, then the response from the ministry was when?
they
This
responded.
is August, 13th August. And when you see the minutes, you see that the next page is where they are handling Ministry of Tourism.
Of much value, Madam Accounting Officer. I wanted to, because I'm looking at the variance of 98 million. And I would have appreciated that that increment is captured here. So what was reversed? First of all, where did this money go? Did it return the consolidated fund?
Consolidated fund, yes.
Now, I want you to look at your cash flow statement. You'll see that what you reversed is 199 million that was NTR.
But for the purposes of this query, we're only focusing on the one on wage, the return on the wage.
No, what I wanted you to relate is that whereas we appreciate these 6 individuals, 4 of whom are principal instructors, that what did not get to them was this exact tune of 98 million, apportioned as follows. So and so ought to have. You see, accountability calls for that. Otherwise, you leave it open-ended. You understand? For this query to be dropped, this information is very significant and key, but it must be related to the amounts. I don't know whether you understand. Because assume a situation where we're going to retreat as a committee of 30 people,
To write a report.
a report, and they are relating this information you have provided with the figures. They will believe this query standing, and circumstantially it affects the accounting officer. So what ought to have been done, even this letter, this post information now to the Ministry of Public Service. Our intention as a committee is to see that this reverse of 98 million was a consequence of this, and the amounts attributed to each individuals were this, and the total is 98 million.
Well, I think that can be done, but it is also, much as when you are budgeting based on your planning. You're saying if we increase this person's wage, they should be able to get this much. Now, over time, every month they're supposed to be getting that money. You're accumulating.
It's okay. Because it can be 10 million to an individual divided by
So
12.
at that point, the figure may have been different. So up to the
Because
time that they were
the one who provided for that appropriation at that level, that sectoral committee should have gone through those. Your activities are costed, that's what I'm telling you.
very different.
And in fact, let me take you to page 35. Your account. If you can conclude this matter, Mr. Chairman, on staffing.
35.
35. Your summary of staff payroll. Page 35 on your accounts. I have 35. It is the last
35.
page before you go to attachments. 35.
Yes, yeah, that one.
That one.
That one there.
Isn't that page 35?
There's so many 35s anyway, but
Okay.
there's another
Now,
one.
that's summary of your staff payroll. I want you to look at your totals. If you look at the first one is salary scales. The other one is the number of employees at the beginning of the year, 1st July 2018. You had 158 staff. Then you added on 38 as new employees to the vote through their blah, blah, blah. The next one is those that were transferred or retired or deceased at 23. Then you look at your total at end of what are you trying to communicate? Because it would be the 158 plus the 38 minus the 23. And it would give you 173. You couldn't have had a difference of staff between 1st July and 30th June. Within 1 day, did you recruit and fire? So it's the opening balance here and the closing balance there. Beginning of the year, on the 1st July, you had 158 staff.
July 2018.
Yes. Then 30th June, within that period of the financial year. So you had others transferred and others deceased. By end of June 2019, it should have been the ones you had plus the new ones.
New ones.
Minus
The one transferred and retired.
Are we together?
171.
It should be 173.
And here you're putting 184.
So even the dead, you have left them there. It's for you to note. It's not a query here, but I say. So what you provide here talks for your figures.
Okay, now let's move to these payables here. The 2.9 billion. That's you're supposed to have done, and you end up paying only about 364, which is actually what we were talking about previously. Leaving an outstanding balance of about 2.9. And these outstanding payments is to the international bodies like the Lusaka Agreement, an UN World Trade Organization, which accumulated over a number of years. Non-clearance of outstanding payables to international bodies means Uganda risks losing it. Now you know the implication. What is your comment on this accounting officer?
Chairperson, it is the same issue that I had talked about earlier. These are obligations that have accumulated over years due to limited budgets. So every year the ministry has been budgeting, but money for contributions to international organizations was not being released. However, I'm glad to say that now the money is being released.
We are not here in a court of law, but well, this committee can be equated to a high court or something, but
you asked, Chair, what we're doing. So what we are doing are two things.
Now what I'm saying is that we are not here to argue to win.
Pardon?
We are not here to argue to win, to be the winner or the loser. We are just here to say, well, this thing has skipped our mind or something like that. Because now, if the budget, we can refer you back to the budget here. Why did you determine that you would be appropriate only 364?
That's what I was coming to.
You see what
The
I'm saying?
364, Honorable Chairman. Was
And actually, what you budgeted for is the money you got.
Yes, because the previous financial year, we had concluded the year without paying our rent fully. So this was money that was now released and we were able to pay the rent arrears. But for the international obligations, finance said compile, and then they hired an auditor, Ernst & Young, to verify arrears in all.
But that one doesn't stop you from budgeting.
But like the accountant was saying.
First 1 minute, accountant. What you budgeted for as payables, in this respect, you were given.
We have understood.
What you are budgeted for here, you go to the appropriation account, number 10, page 10.
And like we said, finance
You
has
see the
said
se-
we
you see
will
the point?
give you that money.
And it goes back to what he was telling you
Yes.
previously. You had an accumulated areas of about 3 billion, 3 billion Uganda shillings. You budgeted for it 364 million.
Because Ministry of
Because you were
Finance
still verifying?
says, give us the figures of the arrears, and then they budget as finance to cover all arrears from the different
Is the letter
sectors.
there? Can you get that letter from the ministry?
Which letter?
That circular that you were talking about?
Where they asked us to verify the arrears.
Yes. Is it
We
there?
have several letters.
Can you get us a copy of that?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Those letters. We have the
You
letter.
have the copy?
I don't think we came with the letter here, but we can provide that. Because they have been trying to verify these areas for a long time from the different ministries. So that's why we didn't budget specifically for this, the money for the international. But if it's an omission, you
What
have
is the
pointed out.
budget?
So like the plan of expenditure and revenue. But like I said, the money, we knew that that was not going to come into our budget. It was going to be budgeted for under Ministry of Finance.
So you made an
So that they
assumption.
get. It is not an assumption. It was based on the communication. from
The
Ministry of
communication, the
Finance.
Minister of Finance, said
Yes.
you remove all your domestic areas,
Yes.
we will be able to budget for it and pay it ourselves? Is that what the letter says?
The Minister of Finance is actually saying part of these payments, non-payments are deliberate.
Yeah, this is what
Because
we
the
say.
MDAs enter into ratification of these treaties, MOUs and agreements without having to know the financial implications from Ministry of Finance. And it is right here in your attachments. It has become apparent, that's 3.2 on page 2. it has become apparent that MDAs enter into treaties, conventions, protocols, acts, agreements, and memoranda of understanding without due approval of the financial implications by the ministry and legal guidance by the Attorney General. So it may not be relating to these ones of yours, but you need to show this committee. You know, there's no way we can help in writing our report by verifying that actually the outstanding commitments in your own statements are valid. One ought to have, when you're making these responses, Madam Accounting Officer, you need assistance from your team. Here, we look at figures, we look at what you relate for us to get response. This one is a proposal. Now, this 3.6 billion, of which they provided 300 million, does it relate to international organizations? Because when you put it in your statement of outstanding commitments, let's go there. It is indicated as goods and services consumed. That's the category in which they are related in your statement. On page 30. So by failure to subscribe, you've consumed a service or a good. So now the confusion that will come to us when, especially for colleagues who have not really had your response. How do we categorize these ones? How many are they? Which ones are they? And how much amount is due to each institution? Then we can collapse this query. We say, otherwise you appear not to have budgeted. You put goods and services in your own statement. I don't know which good you would have consumed by not subscribing.
By not subscribing. And leave alone your response. Leave alone your response is also your response. It doesn't relate to the Ministry of Finance circular to you. You read your response here.
First of all, the
ministry did not pay all the outstanding because there was no budget provision to clear the outstanding areas. Is that? But who is supposed to provide the budget? If I may ask.
Oh, the budget.
Who is supposed to budget?
We budget.
Yeah. So why is there no provision? Why didn't you make the provision for it?
Honorable Chair and Honorable Member, like earlier I explained, when we are budgeting, we are provided with guidelines from finance on how we should budget. The item of arrears, we don't make provisions because in the ceiling they normally don't give figure in the initial budgeting. They don't give us figures for arrears. What we are required to do, Honorable Chair, is that we write to them and indicate that our position on arrears is, and we did that. When Minister of Finance was communicating back, they communicated that the only amount of arrears they were giving was the 363. That is why when we were capturing in the budget, we captured 363. The 363 was out of the stock of the 3 billion point something billion. We never provided for the 3 billion because the tool we were given to complete our budget process did not allow us to provide for arrears, for the figure of arrears, because that figure was to be provided from the Ministry of Finance.
Let me simplify this for you, which you may need to change and you submit to the committee before we write our report. Now, these are responses from you, unless I'm mistaken. Now, in these responses, the Auditor General is saying, I noted that contrary to the PSS directive, out of the stock of arrears of 3.2 billion that were accrued by the end of that last financial year, the ministry only paid 364. leaving an outstanding balance of 2.9 billion at the reporting date. I noted further that the stock of areas reported under Note 24 was not supported by a schedule of the suppliers to whom the ministry owed money. Now, if I were you to answer this query, I would have brought NATO over what those, and then I provided. Now, when you retain it there, we cannot know. We are struggling to find out how you answered this. Otherwise, it appears as
even now
if
you can see this one here is contrary to the PSST, the statement of the Auditor General.
The PSST.
It is saying contrary, which means you did not follow actually the instruction, the directives of the auditor.
yes, because
The PSST.
he had issued instructions.
Yeah.
That
Areas are
all
supposed to be
verified
first call and
outstanding
all
areas
this.
take the first call.
Yeah.
That's what is in the second. But honestly,
Let's have those items,
yes.
Madam Accounting Officer. It can lessen our. Were those meant for us, by the way?
Yes.
So why did you? We are struggling to.
We were going to provide them as we provided the answer.
Look at some copies. But the only copy.
So we were going to speak to them.
What is this withholding tax? Who was withholding what?
The withholding tax normally is normally a system error, which normally comes at the end of the financial year. When we are consolidating our accounts and it comes, we are always advisable that we leave it as a payable. But in the subsequent years, it does not require to provide cash. It clears by itself.
Wait a minute. You know, withholding tax arises on the basis of withholding tax from the supplier. So how does it appear as an error? Did you withhold?
Yeah, that you have paid the supplier, but you have not validated this invoice to go to URA. Therefore, it remains payable to URA.
Wait a minute. You are the one who pays.
Yes.
You are the one who withholds.
Yes.
When you withhold, you make a remission to URA to get a tax clearance certificate, to get a withholding tax certificate that you give to the person you withheld from for him to claim his credit when he's accounting for taxes. So how does it be due to the ministry when you are the withholding agent? Or are you saying they are sanctioning you for not having withheld?
No. You see, these are payments we make when the system is almost closing the June, and there are always those errors in the last hour that remain outstanding, which clear as you put more money on that withholding account, withholding tax account of URA. And when we are consolidating our accounts, we are normally advised that you leave that figure there, in the subsequent accounts, it will clear by itself.
It can't clear by it.
That's how much money we owe.
It is just 183,000.
That's a lot of money. Okay. Now you tell us now. Let's go deeper in this a little bit. So have you been attending functions? I mean, workshops or whatever, called by these organizations?
Wait. United Nations World
World
Tourism
Tourism
Organization. That is all really UN,
So you have been
UN
going there.
members are members.
Without a subscription, you have been going there.
Yes, but like tell you, for example, last year we were not allowed to vote because we were not up to date. So there are certain benefits that you lose, but they will still allow you to attend meetings. So that is the first one. The other one is Lusaka Agreement. Lusaka Agreement is for wildlife. It helps with anti-poaching, anti-wildlife trade trafficking. But this one is for the region. And it's one of those where I think you have some of the cabinet extracts that were on that paper. Government is now reviewing the membership of these different organizations. And so they asked us to confirm those organizations where we will remain, where we are benefiting as members, and those we intend to withdraw from. So we are going to withdraw from the Lusaka agreement because, first of all, it's very expensive, but also we feel that we can get what we are getting from there from the other international, like the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES, CMS, and the others. But you know, UN, WTO, we must remain members.
So when
So-
you don't you pay the arrears?
Yes.
Even when you withdraw?
Yeah. We have to pay the arrears.
So these payments are annual.
Yes.
Now, if they are annual, how come in that financial year you did not accumulate more? Had you suspended your membership then?
They have accumulated.
I am looking at your statement. You see what you declare is what I talk to. You go to page 30. 30. These statements are from you.
But last year, then WTO. So this year.
Do you see that column has 0? So that means that your statement, actually we have more areas than we have reported. Because if it is annual, it ought to have been indicated here.
How much is the total? Because now this one here, it is a combination of so many areas.
What is total last year?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
actually we incurred further charges
Mm.
to these international organizations. Page 30, which the honorary members refer to. If you look at the first column, it was 3.6.
Mm.
Now, you skip the second column after that one.
Adjustments.
Yeah?
The
You
adjustments.
go to prior years commitments paid.
Mm.
The 363, that was because on the 3.6 billion includes the figure of the 363 areas. So that one was paid. But then, now we incur 144.
Please, don't let me tell you my background. Maybe it may help you.
Yes.
I'm not a stranger to these items.
Mm.
That adjustment of 144 is adjustments to the previous year's commitment.
Yes.
It comes out of verification.
Yes.
The new outstanding incurred during this year that we are under considering cannot be 0. When your areas are arising out of annual subscription, unless you say that in that particular year you paid your subscriptions. But if you did not, you cannot leave that column 0. You can't. So that shows that this table, you know, when there are errors we concede, error is human. And one ought to say that, by the way, our position is beyond 3.4 billion. Because even this 3.4 billion, you are going to have trouble. That's why I was asking you about your provision for interest rates, for exchange rates. When you look at these invoices attached, these commitments are United States dollars. They cannot run in subsequent financial years with the same rate. So the position here is not accurate. Yeah, absolutely. So we are not mentioning to challenge you. We are simply indicating to you where problems are. And if we can correct them earlier on before we do report. When we are doing our report, it is intended to assist the sector. That even on these comments, we can make a statement for the debate on the floor, so that these areas should be erased, they must be paid. But the assistance of what comes from you, it is you to provide us with that background. for us to be able to help out. The purpose of us here is not to tear you apart. It is to appreciate the challenge of the sector so that we can come to defend and we clean up for the good of our country. So appreciate it from that angle.
And that's exactly what I told the accounting officer. I said, you know, we are not here to say you're right or wrong, but we're here to appreciate the challenges that we normally go through when making some of these entries. You see the point? Because then your account will continue being skewed for infinity, actually. And that's why we're a little bit concerned about how you have been making some of these entries. Anyhow, I think, yeah.
You see what you submitted here? The 343 billion total. These are your areas as of 30th of June 2019. In this statement of outstanding commitments, you say this is of 30th, on the beginning of 2018, July 2018 was 3. Then there was that adjustment of 144. That adjustment ought to be explained. That one, because it is coming from previous years. Are we together? Normally it comes out of verification. You say, oh, we have forgotten this one, or we have overpaid this one. It's an adjustment provided for you to show the actual. Now, when you reduce what was paid and you don't accumulate any new, then this total here is not representing the true picture of, because there are subscriptions that were due during that financial year. So this must be adjusted to indicate your actual position. It is more than this.
Well, this is the figure as of 30th June
2019.
Now in the financial year 1920, we have started paying.
Now, within that same year that you are accounting for,
Because now we are paying.
it should have indicated what others you accumulated. That is the purpose of within that year. Did you accumulate any further non-subscriptions?
Honorable Chair,
Yes.
Honorable Parliament, I get his guidance clearly. I think the issue on this page is that we needed to correct this column of the new outstanding commitment to reflect what was incurred during that year. What I must tell this committee is that we incurred some commitments which we didn't pay because we got bills from these international organizations and we didn't pay. Therefore,
And the category there, my brother, you also need to change it. Because you should have said these are commitments as transfers to other organizations. When you lump them as goods and services consumed, what service do you consume by failure to subscribe?
Services by subscribing. Get from you, WTO.
So it will create other questions which are not necessary.
And then maybe lastly on that now, you are saying your government has rationalized membership of international organizations
Yes.
from the previous 13 to only 10 essential ones. And I've exited non-essential organizations. Can you elaborate that one more?
Chair, I had just mentioned the Lusaka agreement.
That
Because
you
the
exited?
two that we were.
There are 3 that you have exited. 3.
No, that is, we have exited 3, but the ones that we owe money in this case is Lusaka agreement.
You also exited that one?
That's the one we are exiting.
No, how about the other 2? Which ones are the other 2?
this should have only 2. WTO and Lusaka agreement. So it is the Lusaka agreement.
I'm just referring to your response. I'm just look at your response here.
Mr. Chairman, we have we belong to so many organizations. We
No, you have
subscribe.
13, not so many.
Yes.
There are 13 in numbers.
They are quite a number.
Yes.
So we have submitted those that we I cannot remember now off cuff which ones we are exiting from, but for this particular purpose, we are exiting from Lusaka agreement and retaining UNWTO. But even then, we had requested Uganda Wildlife Authority actually.
The ones we are exiting, have you cleared the areas?
Yeah, some of them are very little money, so we kept paying. There are subscriptions like the sites I was talking about, where you pay like $3,000 a whole year. So there are others who we subscribe to and we pay. We don't owe money.
So these 364 million Uganda shillings, which organization did you pay?
That was rent.
Rent for
the premises where we sit.
Oh, it was rent.
Yeah.
So it wasn't meant for any of these organizations.
No.
Do you have any that falls in the category the Ministry of Finance is trying to dissociate from?
Exactly like that one. When finance wrote to the different ministries, they started an exercise of rationalizing membership, because I think it was becoming a very big burden. So each ministry we had to sit as ministry and take it to a top management and say, these are the organizations, these are very critical, we need to remain as members, and these ones we can exit. So that went to cabinet, and cabinet has now approved those the rationalized ones. So among those that we're exiting is the Lusaka agreement.
Let me ask, wouldn't it be prudent for good budgeting discipline for these protocols to be owned globally by Ministry of Finance as an obligation and an obligation than entities? Because you see, there's something the ministry is trying to run away from, called privatization. And it's an argument that was tabled by Dr. Suruma. I'm an economist, I don't buy it. They seem to be running away from the ministries prioritizing during the budgeting process. Whereas it may not appear ideal for the Ministry of Finance to pay for the Lusaka Protocol, your performance may be hinged on that particular one, because you know the relevance of that protocol. Wouldn't it be good discipline if we suggested that these protocols that are ratified at a level, at the national level, from different sectors, have a budget item globally, so that we don't give them an opportunity to run away from, because they provide money as in when...
Oh, we give it to foreign affairs.
It's something like that. So that they are looked at, not being biased at the sectors. Someone may think that a protocol to do with tourism is not as important as one to do with health. So when they are providing resources, they may be blinded to that extent. What would you think at a forum of accounting officers?
My fear would be that they would not, like you said, they may not appreciate the importance of some of these protocols. So they may not, in a situation where you have a stressed resource envelope, they may not prioritize payments with these subscriptions. So I think it would still be better to have them under the sectors that understand, and then the sectors will prioritize. Where they are not able to pay, then they either withdraw, but the mandatory ones, they...
Have you heard them resisting that thing of unfunded priority? They don't want to listen to that thing, and unfunded priorities, because for them they think because this is a big problem. What are the consequences of non-compliance to these protocols? So if the ministry's performance is tagged to these protocols, which are annual, then your performance will suffer. I think, Chair, we need a critical view.
No, you are right, because you see, in the Ministry of Agriculture, I remember they went for some meeting outside. And actually, literally they were chased away. And even the local staff was a big issue. They had to rush now to pay, because to subscribe. You know, because we were not invaded by locals, so it was not a priority at that particular time. So I think we need to think about this and in our recommendations, we should be able to say something about it. Because otherwise, and some of you are embarrassed by the way you are told, some of you are embarrassed when you go outside.
Yeah.
They lock you out, your travel. You have money for travel to go and attend the meeting, but you don't have money to subscribe as members.
And I'm looking at travel abroad, for instance. Isn't this tagged to interactions in these same things that we are defying?
So I was giving that example where my minister
Was locked out.
was locked out voting, and yet we were supposed to be voting for an African country to take over some, I think Kenya, so, but Uganda couldn't vote.
He had trouble.
It's
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Why would he travel? Why would he fear his trouble when we are not compliant?
Well, there were other activities apart from that particular agenda item. So there are other issues that he could participate in, but when it comes to voting, you're not barred from the meetings, but when it comes to things like voting, then you are excluded. And the minister was very embarrassed and, of course, not happy with us. This is why haven't you paid?
The essential thing in life is for you to participate in voting.
Mm.
That's very essential. And if you are denied that, then you know you are completely, absolutely. So anyway, we'll look at that and see how we can make recommendations, proper recommendations. We have taken note of that actually. Now let's move to your unaccounted for funds advance. Is it advances? What is this? The 55 million. What happened to that money that he was not accounted for?
So, Chairman, we regret that
Is
this,
there a
I don't
schedule?
know why this
Is there a
accountability was
Is there a
not.
schedule for this? Huh?
This was an activity. I don't know why the file was not
No, this was an
given to
activity.
the auditors, but it was an activity that our museum was carrying out an activity that was regional. We've been trying to get our rock art sites in Nyero to be listed under the World Heritage Sites. And then UNESCO said we should do it together as a region with Kenya and Tanzania because they also have similar. So we had held a workshop here and we brought in people from these other countries, but we facilitated their participation, apart from their tickets, of course. So we paid for the hotels, we paid for some of their allowances, but I don't know.
But this money was meant for workshop.
Yes, we have that.
Fuel and then purchase of goods and services.
Exactly.
In a nutshell, this was workshops money, not necessarily for you to support people from
These
outside.
were workshops. There was a workshop. I actually personally participated in some of these workshops.
But here the indication is the purchase of goods and services. What kind of goods and services do you purchase for people who are coming, whom you are supporting to attend workshop?
There are so many other expenditures, like I don't know what purchase.
So this is an accumulation of so many
So we have the
expenditures?
accountability and the activity report.
Why were you not able to give to the Auditor General that time?
That's why I'm saying that I regret that they didn't get the accountability. I think sometimes there's a problem with tracing documents, but the accountability was there. We have it.
Two vouchers.
Which you are involved.
One was for accommodation and field visits for experts on this serial nomination I talked about. The others were mapping and documentation on sites in Lake Victoria and Mwanza region.
So internal audit, what are you saying about this? How did this one elude you? Because then this thing should have been able to arrest the situation before coming to the Auditor General.
Thank you, Chair, through my accounting officer. That accountability was there. It was even cleared by internal auditors. I don't know really how it was captured by the Auditor General.
It was captured because it was not presented to them.
But it was cleared by our office. We saw the accountability and it was satisfactory for retirement.
Do you have a copy of accounts? Or your accounts? Do you have this? They are with you.
Yes.
You help me in your trial balance.
What was it?
I want to see that money.
Yeah, then we want to know when was this money spent? Is it within the financial year?
It was advanced, I think, towards the end of financial year, but was spent in July. The accountability was submitted in July for verification.
But July now is when do you do audits?
I would like to, my colleague here, internal audit, she may not be having the appendix, but what we have submitted to you, Chair, these two vouchers, these two transactions happened early at the beginning of the financial year 2018-2019. That was in August, and one is in October 2018. So it's not...
Yeah, I'm seeing here is August and October.
Yes, yes.
One was in August, one was in October 2018. So we have the whole period.
Honorable Chair, my comment is not the trial balance. My comment was on these accountabilities. I must concede that the Auditor General didn't get these ones here. And of course, when we were preparing to appear before back, now it was just the filing problem with the chairman. But the accountabilities, the people who advanced this money and did the activity had actually submitted, but somehow the filing and keeping was the
You see, that's the challenge we have.
That's I must concede on this one. And Honorable Chair and Honorable Parliament, I am pleading that we have the accountabilities here on original form. The activity was carried out, we have activity reports, and the people who carried out did submit the accountabilities.
Supposing I said you recover this money.
Pardon?
Because we are not here to look for the accountabilities and whatever. We don't have that mandate to examine the receipts and the vouchers. So we only handle what has been brought before us. With the exception of few instances where if there are really very complete explanation, that's when we ask for documentation. Now you're giving us those documents, we cannot be able to look at it.
We are begging.
What are you going to do? Supposing we say you recover the money.
But the officers who were advanced the money accounted. So now, that's why we are just really begging your indulgence.
When you look at the... Because you see, it's very difficult to determine whether the money was really used for that purpose.
Okay, you show it to me in your accounts.
Because I was even attending the workshop and seeing the pictures. Some of I was present. So I can assure you that the activities took place, at least the one that I attended, and then the others I know that officers went.
Suppose you are giving us a different picture or a different workshop.
I cannot do that.
We are not
For this
photo
kind of
experts
value.
to determine that this was exactly the workshop you attended. Therefore, we are related to this.
We are only begging your indulgence, Chair, that you bear with us and allow the auditors to look at the accountability. But the activities were carried out, the accountability was done, but like you said earlier, to err is human, and the filing was not perfect, so that file was not seen at the moment, but it was later.
How many people attended this workshop? The first one here, the 19 million. The 19 million. Was this the second one? Was it?
I see there are like
28. And then the mapping and documentation, the site. This is consultancy or what? 36 million.
Mapping and documentation of sites is done by our experts, and this one included also experts from the other countries. They are supported by UNESCO. UNESCO experts and ICOMOS. So they have to go to these sites, map them, do documentation, and then submit to UNESCO for them to be able to see whether this site is fit to be a World Heritage Site.
What happened during the exit meeting with the Auditor General?
The receipt was already ready.
They raised it, but we had not accessed these documents still.
So how
was it?
It remained outstanding.
So how recent are those documents?
These are all documents which were...
No. When did you retrieve them?
Some weeks back.
Well,
So they came after your responses. Because I can see in the responses, you say accountability was done and it's on file.
And then we started.
Which file?
Because there was a record showing that this officer had submitted. Because when they submit accountability, they get like an acknowledgement receipt. So the officer had her acknowledgement receipt, and she had submitted all the original documents. So we started now. It's just that we kept wondering where they were misplaced, but eventually the file was found.
So what you should have done, as part of your responses, they should have been attached.
The acknowledgement receipt.
The accountabilities. Because here you say 55 million that was outstanding was accounted for, and the accountability is on file. So you'd have provided for anyone to appreciate this response, to see those attachments, like part of the appendices that you have attached here. So you're going to have to request Chair to permit you to submit them to the Auditor General for verification. I don't know which side I am, Chair, I'm sorry.
We request you, Chairman, to allow us to submit them.
no, the issue is that we need to know exactly when this accountability was done also.
It's done.
When was it?
The accountability was done
Within the stipulated time?
Yes, immediately after the activity.
On the document
And the
disappeared?
officers did, we have acknowledged that the officers.
So where was the document lying?
Within our filing system, but was mixed up. Within our own filing records, where we file all these accountabilities and the vouchers, paid vouchers and files. This is where we had to see it. And because
So you sat for how long?
immediately
For how long did it take you to shoot that?
I can't tell, Honorable Chair, I can't tell because alongside looking for...
No, you see, we need to be honest. For me, I want honesty. I want honesty.
And this
If
is
you
all honesty.
retrieve it recently, you can say recently. Say we were not able to get the actual account, we had to redo it.
No, we have not redone.
Then how long did it take you to retrieve that?
Honorable Chair, I can't tell because alongside looking
You know the audit period between the time the audit is done, and then the second, what do you call it, exit meeting, how long does it take?
Madam Chair, we
No,
know.
I'm just asking him, because he has opted to answer.
I beg you.
How long is the closure of the audit and then the exit meeting? How long does it always take?
It took a few weeks. I can't still remember the period, but it took some few weeks there, few days, and then we appeared before the exit meeting after they had finished.
But you know the audit cycle?
Yes, I know, sir. I know.
For me, I know you have doctored those accountabilities.
Madam
So
Chair,
it's better to tell us that, sincerely we have to really make sure that
I cannot, as an accounting officer, really, doctor will come and tell you that these are the internal auditor saw them. In fact, she's the one who kept saying, I saw these accountabilities, they must be on file. And then we tasked the people in accounts to really look. Because I was also tasking my officers the way you are tasking us. Because if the accountability was done and there's an acknowledgement receipt, how does it disappear? So until later I found it was a filing problem. So we can't doctor. There are certain things you can't doctor. People coming from Tanzania, you are on hiring boats in a doorway. You can't doctor that kind of account.
maybe they didn't come.
But
Because
I
you
am
see, the
telling you as an
auditor is
accounting
raising the
officer that I
question
saw
here
it.
that he was not convinced that this activity actually took place.
Of course, that is how.
That's what he's saying
right.
here. That he cannot verify
We
whether the
cannot
activities
doctor that
actually
kind of
took place.
accountability.
It was difficult for him to verify, to assess whether the funds were spent for the intended activities.
That's why we are.
And he's
regretting.
actually on my side saying that delayed accountability may lead to falsification of documents. So you prove that that's not falsification. You did not.
Oh, that's why
Sit down
I'm
somewhere.
begging
Now
that
you
you
need
allow
to
them
go.
to
You
look
go
at
to the
it.
hotel that they give you this receipt. We write this field here. Go to the petrol station. Collect this.
Yeah, that's why
Because I'm going to make you to refund this money.
That's why I'm begging that you allow the auditors
To recover
look
this
at
money
it,
from
because they can do that
people.
accountability. They can do that confirmation.
You are saying?
I'm saying that that's why we are requesting that you allow the auditor general to look at it again, because they can even go, for example, to skies where we had.
You know, this report has already been
confirmed.
submitted in Parliament. So it has already been audited, and then Parliament, that's now the audited report. So even if they look at the accountability, you may not now be able. We have made others to refund, to recover, and they are recovering. So would it be fair if I say recover?
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can add on.
Yes.
I can confirm that the activity took place, and I would think it would be very unfair really to make the officer for us to recover the money, because some of this activity took place in Tanzania, Mwanza, and the receipts are there. With this lockdown, really somebody cannot go and doctor the receipts. The activity took place, and the officer accounted within the time and submitted the accountability. All that in our accounts.
So who was the one in charge of keeping the documents?
The accounts, we have a problem of keeping documents. At the time the officers were doing the audit, the documents were not
Why is it
sent.
that it is the only document missing?
I think the other documents were filed properly. Sometimes
And why was it
filed-
not filed properly?
That's very difficult for me to know whether it was. I don't think it was deliberate. It's just an error. It happens. You can't.
And
may not
Mr.
make
Chair,
so
we have
many
been
errors.
really looking for these documents, and we delayed getting the documents because of the lockdown. You know, since March we have not been working. So that's why at the time of our audit response, we say that the documents are on file, but we are not recovered it.
Okay, now you give it to the accounting, auditor general. Let them verify. You submit, you lay on table. Lay on table. Lay on table. Lay on table. You use the microphone.
Mr. Chairman and honorable member, I wish to lay on table the accountabilities for 55,460,000.
Okay. Financial year 20.
Financial year 2018, 2019.
That was missing.
That was missing. Thank you, Mr.
You know,
Chairman.
this thing is captured. You know, we will go back to these records.
Say due to wrong filing.
And then we will.
Mr. Chairman, will forgive me, some of us are not all versed with the procedure, so when we make mistakes in procedure,
Better lad, you're about to retire. Maybe you
forgive me.
maybe you'll come to parliament.
He's still a young man.
When you retire. Oh, you- Nobody. Who is the member of parliament? Is he here with me? You man. So why are you? No, I didn't know. We should have retired him from here. Because so he's just trying to. Now let us move to this staff performance. Let's do it concurrently. I think there are almost, I don't know how many issues are here. There is non-submission performance agreement report. There is the development of a performance plan which is lacking. Then there is the non-submission performance appraisal report. Completion of quarterly performance review. Not done. I think that's what it means. Completion performance improvement plans according to the public service standing orders. Do you have HR here? You are the HR.
We have to limit the numbers.
Non-submission of performance agreement report. Can you comment on that?
Chair, we would like to agree that what the auditors were raised is actually in line with the public service standing orders, instructions. And we have since improved our performance planning. We have carried out training for all staff. We have had retreats for all staff to work on their performance plans. We have ensured that performance appraisal is done and performance monitoring. So I can assure you that this year we will not have any problem with this.
So there was a problem.
There was a
What was the gap? What was causing all this?
maybe it is to do with capacity. That's why we have decided to do it.
You as the accounting officer don't make that statement. Maybe.
Well,
You just be straightforward and say these are the issues.
there are many issues. That
Recently, I was in a meeting in Buru, and then they asked me to comment on, because I'm the chair of actually parliamentary group. So they asked me to comment on the problems that is within the association, the organization. Then when I started mentioning maybe, they said, no. You mean you are not sure? You are not sure of what you are talking to us. So maybe you tell us exactly what it is. What has been the problem of these issues that have raised a lot of audit queries in terms of the performance appraisal?
Like I said, there could be many issues, but what I think contributed most is training, and we have noticed that there was a gap in as far as performance management was concerned. And so that's why we have prioritized it in our training plan.
What is it to do with training?
Training people
Are
to
the
do
staff
performance management.
are the staff failing to fill those documents, or what? What happened? Because
Some
in
were
the
filling,
in the
some were
regional
not
in the
filling.
regional referral hospital recently, one of the directors said, you see this, even when we fill, it doesn't add up, nothing is done. So, to hell with it. Is that the attitude?
It could be an
among the
attitude
staff?
problem, but for me, I think it's more of a capacity problem. That's why I'm thinking that the solution was to
Capacity to fill to do it.
because it's not just that you do. You have to sit down and plan and say, this is what we're going to do. Set yourselves targets. Then the appraisers must be able to monitor the performance continuously and then appraise.
So
Then
whose capacity? Who's lacking capacity?
both the appraisees and the appraisers. So that's where we are handling it from that angle to build the capacity of everybody.
But you are also supposed to appraise others. Have you done your part?
Yes, I appraise very few. I only appraise the director, and then he appraises the commissioners. I appraise the director and I appraise the undersecretary. The few people who report directly to the PS are few.
So you did
So
that
those
part.
ones I do.
You did that part. So the directors, the undersecretaries are the ones who are not appraised. The
He
others.
is very new. By that time, he had it come.
No, I mean the ones that are
The ones who have, yeah.
who has not done each part.
But now it has been done. When they were
No,
auditing
we are
the-
talking about this because you see,
Yes.
we do not want it to appear, to reappear
Mm.
in your audit queries again in the next financial year. And we want to know the center of the problem because we are taking it seriously.
So what the auditors were querying, first of all, was that
Mhm.
we had not submitted performance agreement reports to the
Mhm.
Ministry of Public Service by 15th September.
So
As
who was
required
supposed
by
to
the
who was supposed to submit that one?
The PS, but it should be
The
provided
PS?
by the
Non-submission
So it makes it
performance.
difficult
Yeah,
for Ministry of
the
Public
PS was
Service
supposed to
to
submit this. So what happened? You didn't submit.
then the development of performance plans, so they are also auditing that.
That is also a PS, rule a PS.
No, that was now real staff. How it was observed that out of 197 staff in post at the beginning of the financial year, only 130 had filled. So it's not like nobody filled, but they are looking at the number of people who hadn't.
Who are these six? Can we submit the name of these 67 staff to PAC? We find out why they have not filled their performance plan. Yes, through the PS, through the accounting officer.
Mr. Chair, through the accounting officer, maybe I can add my voice on that. Performance agreement reports are usually submitted by officers in the scale of U2 and above. And then U3 and below, they submit performance plans, and which form the basis of our performance appraisals. Now, it has been a general problem across all ministries, not only Ministry of Tourism.
Why are you talking for other ministries? Are you the spokesperson?
No.
You talk about your ministry.
We didn't know about how to fill this, especially the performance plans. But ever since we have had trainings by the Human Resource Officer on how to do it, and we are now doing it. Even the performance appraisal, we have been filling them, but without performance plans. So there was no basis against which we are being appraised. But ever since the audit, we now know how to fill the performance plans. And I can confirm to you that staffs are now doing it properly.
Okay. You know you take this one very serious. No, you take this one very serious. No, you take this one very serious. No, you take this one very serious.